l'Operazione Nostalgia, for those of you who have never been, it hasn't been well covered, in all fairness. The amount of shirts on show, because this was more of a festival of football than it was about the actual match itself. All the greats from the last 3-4 decades, even if we stretch it back, a couple of players in their mid-50s, late 50s, guys like Aldair. There's a full list on the actual L'Operazione Nostalgia Raduno Instagram page. Players like Zanetti, Dida, of course, the great Roberto Baggio was there, Shevchenko and Milito and the rest, and still in decent shape. Most of them except for Sebastian Frey. He was signing autographs in the fan zone, and you guys were there. We've got the video uploaded to our Instagram channel for those that want to see a bit of the footage. Emmet, what was your favourite shirt? You can't say Juventus.
One of the great things about the day was seeing the variety of different shirts. I mean, we saw everything from West Ham to Celtic, the Cosenza, a Colombia shirt from Italian 90, to obviously the plethora of Baggio shirts from Italy, Brescia, Milan, Juve, Bologna, Fiorentina shirt. But I would say probably the one shirt that caught my eye was a Jorge Campos goalkeeper Mexico shirt from 1983, which is a very rare shirt. Just because it's multicolored and Campos on the back. I mean, it's scandalous probably not to pick a Baggio shirt, considering we were all there basically to see Robbie Baggio. But just for the pure aesthetics, I have to go with the Jorge Campos Mexico 93 shirt. It caught my eye, and we were outside the stadium, and I said, lads, we have to go and talk to this guy because I just wanted to know how he got the shirt. And if I remember rightly, he was a Lazio fan, and he collected shirts, and I was just like, yeah, we have to talk to this guy. But it was a great weekend, full of different shirts.
Yeah, just going back to that guy, of course, you've picked the Mexico shirt, one of the only ones that wasn't from Serie A, L'Operazione Nostalgia theme, but he rattled off like so many names in his favourite Lazio side, going back to Nedved and Nestor and the whole lot from the glory days. Dan, let's throw to you. Which one caught your eye the most?
For the purpose of this exercise, we have to pick one. So I'm going to go with the gentleman we spoke to who was on his own at the Torino 1993 pop on. And I'm going to pick that for two reasons. First of all, because it was a long sleeve kit, and not enough is made of the disappearance of long sleeve kits these days. They used to be everywhere in the 90s, and now they just seem to have disappeared. And we should be bringing them back. We really should, along with proper footballs rather than the multicolored stuff that we get these days. Anyhow, back onto the shirt. The shirt, I believe, is made by a company which no longer exists, which used to produce kits for Serie A. And when you look at it, it's just got the like Italia, so the football Italia feel to it. It's garish, but not too extravagant. It just oozes football heritage, to quote Jose Mourinho. And of course, it's the last kit Torino ever won a trophy in, and will probably be the last kit Torino.
We apologise to Torino fans for that comment, but
he
also had a tattoo, didn't he?
He did. He had a tattoo of a chair, and for those of you who weren't alive back then, it's representing Emiliano Mondonico lifting a chair to the Amsterdam sky to protest against the referee in the 1992 UEFA Cup final. Such a symbol of rebellion, which is what Torino are all
and
about.
the match itself, we went into the actual stadium, the Stadio Silvio Piola there in Novara. That's where this match was hosted. They actually had one in Salerno a few weeks back. They had Totti there as well at that one. He wasn't at the Novara match itself, but they did bring along a few grades. Damiano, Tommasi, Karagunis, one of the best players for me on the pitch. The player list was sensational. The likes of Pasquale Luiso was on there. Emmet, what do you think of the match? It wasn't the fastest paced match.
I think that's it. But you know what? I enjoyed it, and you could see, as you said at the top of the show, you know, a lot of these players were in their early to mid 50s. You know, maybe apart from Sheva, Zanetti, I'm not sure Dida Talley might be still in his 40s, but the majority of them were in their 50s, and you could see the football brain was still there. They knew what they wanted to do. The legs just wouldn't compute what the brain wanted to do, but some players were, as you said, you know, Karagunis put in a serious shift and was one of the.
Yeah, and of course the man that everyone was there to see, we took it kind of like a survey. You can see the video on our Instagram page and TikTok. It's basically, who do you want to see the most today? And even though he wasn't playing, everybody said Roberto Baggio. He was on site. probably Italy's greatest ever player in terms of a number 10. And I know other people will dispute that with Maldini and Cannavaro, who won a Ballon d'Or. So did Baggio. Cannavaro won a World Cup. Baggio didn't. But what was it like for you guys to see the great man with your own eyeballs? Emmet?
We were in the car park outside the stadium, and I think Dan turned around to me and said it was like a Baggio pilgrimage, and that's essentially what it was. People were coming from all over Italy to see him, or they hailed from like Puglia or Sardinia or Calabria, and they maybe lived in the north, but they all were there to see Baggio. You know, I'd maybe say it was about 65% of the crowd had Baggio shirts on. You know, as I said at the start, from his various clubs and the Azzurri. And then seeing him in the stadium, you know, when he came out for the lap of honour, it was emotional. And you could see that we could see even from the stand, and we were kind of at the back of the stand, you could see that he was visibly emotional, and he was holding back tears by physically like putting his fingers in his eyes. He was emotional, obviously, given what had happened a few weeks ago, you know, him getting robbed at his home during the Spain and Italy game. And you can see he really appreciated the support that people were out for him. I think there was a double meaning. I think he heard.
Yeah, nobody cared. They just wanted to see him. Yeah, you wrote a piece on him for The Guardian a few months back to celebrate the anniversary of his retirement, 20 years since he's played. He acknowledged that as well on the Serie, Operazione Nostalgia Instagram page. For those of you who haven't seen it, go check it out because it's amazing. You'll see where players are at these days and what they're doing. There's some great photos of him embracing Shevchenko and Zanetti and all the rivalries. Baggio played at some of the best clubs in Italy. He never played abroad, which is something unfortunate for fans that are based in the UK or in Spain. But Juventus, Inter, Milan, Fiorentina, Bologna, finished up at Brescia, started off with Vicenza, still lives in the Provincia di Vicenza, which is where you were going before with the burglary, and he was held up with his family while watching some of the Euros, and that's what some of the people there, I mean, 13,000 people, they had one stand closed, the rest was packed. They sold every ticket that was available, and you have to remember this is in a town that's on the border of Piemonte and Lombardia. It's an hour outside of Milan or more, also from Torino, so you have to, it's a destination to see Baggio, and that's why it felt like a pilgrimage. Dan, look, he's a man that is he's honourable. He was such a good player on the field. What was it like for you to see him, and what did the actual atmosphere feel like for you overall?
I thought that the most significant aspect of him being on the pitch was how young fans, some of whom were not even born when he was at his peak, saw their dads or their older brothers or older friends react as seeing him in the flesh, because I don't think that you can quite understand how much he means to football fans simply by reading about it or watching YouTube clips. But when you're there with someone who's seen him play and you see how they react to seeing him, not even play, just be on the pitch, I mean, that has to be a eureka moment, you know. It's kind of like, wow, this is what it means. This is what he's meant to my dad, my brother, you know, my best mate, whoever it may be, and this is what it's meant to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And I think it's significant also how, and we spoke about this on Sunday, how he has played for three of arguably the biggest clubs in Italy, and there isn't a bad word said about him, you know, and it's incredibly rare to have a player who can embrace so many different clubs and be so loved and appreciated by a country. I don't think you could make a case for a player like that in the Premier League. You probably couldn't make a case for a player like that in La Liga. I assume the Brazilian Ronaldo may be the kind of player in Brazil, and obviously Maradona in Argentina. You know, when tribalism is so common, it's just very rare to see a player who manages to be like a unifying force across the board.
I think the closest comparison, you were talking about Brazilian Ronaldo, it did feel like, to me, considering the ocean of different shirts there, it didn't matter who had what on their back. We saw Pipo Maniero, we saw Belotti, we saw loads of different players, loads of Milan and Inter shirts. Everyone was there to celebrate Baggio. It didn't matter who supported what club. It didn't feel like that people were there to support a club. Obviously, it's a legends game. the result, no one's going to be upset one way or the other who wins. It was literally a festival of celebrating Calcio, and that's why it was so important to be there and cover that and bring it to people back home, because it's not a well covered event, as many things are in Italy, not well promoted outside of Italy. Many people, in fact, that we interviewed said, it was my first or it's my second Raduno, which means gathering, get together. And it literally feels like a get together of the world's best players from 10, 20, 30 years ago. They get back together, sort of like the Expendables, all the greatest coming together just to put on a show for all the fans that made the effort to get there. Everyone had to shout out to get there. And the tickets weren't expensive. They're only, 12, 13 euros. In the seats we have in the Curva Nord. We had some friends come from Milan. Everyone enjoyed it. We had a couple of guys that were with us, Federico and Andrea, and also Alberto. Federico is an Inter supporter. I'll give him that. But he was there for Zanetti mostly, and Milito. It was actually me heckling him that Milito wasn't having a good game. And seconds later, Milito scored. But still, I'll wear that one. But Alberto and also Andrea haven't a clue about football. Alberto's first ever game in his life, and he's 30 years old. So
I think we need to give a shout out to Alberto.
Yeah, we should have him on the show.
I was just
had to tell him it's kind of like Michael Jordan, because I know he's into basketball, and he's born in Milan, so you don't hold that against him for not knowing much about football. But yeah, his first game is Roberto Baggio and Andrea, who gave up football as a Milan fan as a kid because they'd lost that Champions League final. It was an agonizing loss to Liverpool. Two ends of the spectrum there, Alberto and Andrea. Still, we saw fans coming together, people that hadn't been to watch Serie A live for years because they prefer the old days to the current days, and that's something that we probably could speak about for hours, about culture and where it's evolved from, and the pedigree and the honor of playing in a league like Serie A because of the past. Because we don't have those players anymore. We don't have the Shevers and the Baggios anymore. We don't even have the Di Cagnos and the Zolas. We've got a whole different group of kids coming through, a lot less Italians playing as well. And, it was just special to be there with Baggio on show. Would have been nice to have Battistuta there.
maybe for next year we can put a suggestion forward.
Yeah, we'll come up with our own list of legends. Let's move on to the town of Novara itself. That's where we were for the game. Stadio Silvio Piola, one of the legends that played with Novara for 7 seasons. Started off with Vercelli, and in the era of the 30s and 40s and 50s for Piola. Probably no one alive now that was able to see him play live, but a hero in Novara. There's 2 stadiums named after him, in fact, one in Vercelli, which is not too far away, and of course the new one in Novara, newer. Well, Dan, you wrote an article on it for Destination Calcio. It's on the website. So 24 hours in Novara. That's a little series we're doing on different Italian towns as we get around to see different games this season. Started off in Novara for 2024-25. Interesting piece. You've included a lot of different, some historical facts and directions on how to get from the train to here and there. Your overall thoughts?
Look, as a football anorak, I'm glad I've ticked another football ground off my list. I don't think I would have ever probably been to the Silvio Piola had it not been for this event. But I agree with Emmet. Lovely enough town. Some great food. Nice and tidy, walkable. Look, obviously, I think it's neither Turin nor Milan. It's neither here nor there in their respect, and he obviously is probably overshadowed by both. But we were talking about the players on display earlier. Like Novara would probably be a Mauro Bressan, a nice, tidy midfielder. He's not the biggest star on the team, but you need those players to win trophies, to win titles.
And he was there, of course, for the game.
Not a bad word to say about him. Competent, does what he says in the team, and you can't have expectations that are too lofty. But
if you jump in a cab, it's about 10 minutes. It's probably a half-hour walk from the Piazza Garibaldi. I thought it was a stunning little town. Of course, it's not on the radar for people just going to Italy in their first 5 or 6 visits, unless you're passing through or you're going on purpose to watch Novara, which is, let's be honest, the former home of Bruno Fernandes, current Manchester United midfielder. Also, Simone Inzaghi played there a little while, current Inter coach. But the food was delicious. We went to a place called Civico 27. It was recommended by our hotel concierge there, but she gave us good directions. It was probably walkable in 10, 15 minutes from the hotel. The food, the Parmigiano for me was unbelievable. And then we also had, you guys had a bit of red wine, just to sample it, just for the sake of this,
Which was
pod.
superb.
And overall, I thought you had the ravioli, you had the bucatini, I had the salad, of course, but you know, a nice basilica there, a lovely little town, very accessible with the train from Milan and Torino. And I'd have to say, I would recommend it for people looking to get away because there's no tourists there. Let's be honest.
That's true, yeah.
And the trains were getting cancelled 1 minute before departure.
We were there, then the Trenitalia person told us to go to Bovisa, so we got to Bovisa. From there, we had to watch the screen tick down with cancelled or suspended or late, but it was a Sunday, so they recovered. So eventually by 11 a.m. we got a train. So the train was only €5. That's all in Dan's wrap as well about Novara, the town. We also will have a stadium guide for the Silvio Piola coming your way. Just to wrap up this, we were in Milan just before Novara. That's where we were based. We had time to go to the San Siro Stadium on Saturday, the day before the Raduno. And we also went to the museum, so we've got an interesting video for people who want to see inside the museum without seeing too much, because we want you to go. But it was a crisp blue day in Milan before the wet weather came for Sunday night in Novara. Guys, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for joining Emmet Gates and Dan Cancian, senior writers for Destination Calcio.